America will never win the war against terrorism without help from the Muslim community.
His name is Andre Carson, elected representative from the state of Indiana. Normally, when a lawmaker is appointed to a committee, it barely raises a single hair of a single eyebrow. But when the committee is the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and the lawmaker is a Muslim, you can imagine what some are saying. Let's welcome to Midpoint. He is the U.S. Army veteran, holder of a PhD in Islamic history, and closely follows the culture and geopolitics of the faith. We're going to be joined in a few moments by Timothy Furnish. But before we are, let's give you some background on exactly what we're talking about here. The gentleman in case again here is Andre Carson. The key here is that while Nancy Pelosi has named him to be the first Muslim lawmaker to the House Intelligence Committee, he already serves on the Armed Services Committee, and he has also worked for the Department of Homeland Security's Fusion Center, the clearinghouse established by the federal government to streamline data sharing between the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the military. So part of the issue here is, if he has been on these committees before, why is it a big deal that he is on to this committee? Let's find out right now, and Timothy Furnish joins us on Midpoint. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
All right, now I've just given everybody a little bit of the background here because we talk about the House Intelligence Committee, but we have to point out that Representative Carson has already been involved in several committees before, but there are people worried about this. Should we be worried, and why?
Well, perhaps not worried, but perhaps a bit of caution would be in order. Representative Carson does, sort of a mixed blessing he appears to be on this issue. He has served, as you pointed out, at the state level with anti or counterterrorism units, Fusion Center in Indiana. He has a degree in criminal justice, and all that could be useful. However, his Islamic background is also a bit problematic. He comes out of the background of the Nation of Islam movement. His grandmother seems to have been pretty familiar with Louis Farrakhan. And however, that said, his mosque, as near as I could ascertain, the mosque that he attended in Indiana was one of the mosques from sort of the reformed branch of the Nation of Islam movement.
Okay, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for you with you, Tim, because we have a limited amount of time here. We understand that there's connections, but let's be honest, there's been no connection, no investigation, no findings whatsoever that Mr. Carson has any sort of radical leanings whatsoever, correct?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
So,
but
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say it is problematic because remember, Islam is not monolithic. There are denominations and sects and different movements within Islam. The Louis Farrakhan movement is by most Muslims not considered to be mainstream Islam at all. I mean, it teaches things that aren't in the Quran, such as white people are blue-eyed devils, which I read the Quran. It's not in there.
Right.
However, this movement, the movement that was basically the reform movement of the Nation of Islam, which moved closer to mainstream Islam, mainly under the tutelage of some of the imams from Al-Azhar in Cairo, is much less problematic. So I don't think we should automatically assume that Representative Carson is going to have a problematic background. What we will have to watch out for, however, will he be honest about the Islamic issue and the fact that 2/3 of the world's terrorist groups are Muslim? Or will he sort of simply play defense and sort of be an apologist for the movement?
Okay, now, having said that, and I completely agree with you, and we always have to be cautious because it's a kind of world that we live in right now, but isn't it fair to say that the people right now who are complaining about him taking this position on the House Intelligence Committee need to back up and wait until there's proof that something is here? Granted, of course, we still need to be cautious of things. It doesn't make a difference whether you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, whatever. We still have to wait and see, but you got to back down just a little bit here before we all become Islamophobes.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, the fact that CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, gave money to his campaign, I do not think ipso facto makes the point that he may share their views. CARE does this with a lot of different folks. So I think that caution is the word. I think we cannot automatically say, look, Muslims are part of America. I won't go as far as the president, of course, to be historically inaccurate and say that they've always been here. But Muslims are, although a small percentage of the American population, less than 1%, a part of American society. And there are many people that will try to argue, for instance, that Islam is not a religion, which is just patently absurd. Islam is a religion. People have First Amendment rights in this country as Muslims. And I think we have to wait and see with Mr. Carson and not jump to the conclusion.
I think that is exactly the point we're talking about here. Certainly it's interesting. Certainly it's something we have to look at. But as we said, there doesn't need to be an immediate condemnation because he is an elected official. Now let's see, he or anybody else, you have to at least be patient and wait and see what happens. I believe that is correct.
Right.
Tim, unfortunately, we're all out of time. This is a discussion, though, that we need to have further as we continue to watch what happens around the world and also wait and see how it affects America. We will have it again. Tim Furnish, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, break, and we return with a side of law enforcement protecting America we rarely, if ever, discuss, and whether they are really prepared to aid in the war on terror. And at 51 minutes after the hour, and telling it like it is, the one ailment we have found no cure for here in America. That's coming up right here on Midpoint.